foreign drivers, right? That's what they've said. Now, it came on Facebook today. He said it's very funny that them in power who were used to the cheap labour of Europe are now withdrawing the lorry. He says no, nothing to do with a lack of lorry drivers.
It is a lack of lorry
He
drivers.
says it's to do with them holding it back. He says for you to, what they're planning on doing is they'll hold things back for a while and cause problems, and then they'll say, you know, it's all to do with Brexit.
No, I don't do with it. It's already to do with Brexit. Because what you didn't realise was half the stuff that moved
Well,
up.
if you think it's going to be hard breaking away after 50 years,
David,
what if you try doing it after 300?
David, hold on a minute, right?
Aye.
Half the stuff that moved around this country was down to foreign drivers bringing it into the country. They're not coming into the country anymore because they can't afford to. Because they have to self-isolate for 10 days.
Well, that's not the Brexit's fault.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is, because they don't have to self-isolate for 10 days moving across the rest of
You're
Europe.
sitting shouting at Boris, saying Boris is off his seat.
Yeah, no, he's off his seat.
Right, and then you're saying, wait a minute, but it's all right. Europeans let you travel about and do all you want.
David. The COVID restrictions for foreign people coming into the country from Europe is because of Brexit.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. Because they have the same COVID restrictions in the rest of Europe. They have the same COVID problem in the rest of Europe.
But you're saying it's all right.
In Europe, David, they just have to take regular COVID tests. In this country, he's got to take a COVID test when he has to pay about 400 quid for the test. And he has to do that every time he wants to enter the country. And he also has to self-isolate for 10 days in a hotel.
Fraser, you have to do that if you were going to...
No, it doesn't matter if you have to do that, Dave. No, David, it doesn't matter where you have to do that. The foreign driver's getting forced to do that, and it's his job. And he can't afford to do it, so they're not coming here anymore, because they can't afford to come here. Just on Monday morning, right? 900,000 tons.
Tell it to the Polish drivers.
You're talking bullshit.
See if I was to take
David, it's like every guy and every beggar on every corner in Glasgow is a Romanian. How do you know? Well, you could tell them. They've all got wee violins with trumpets on them.
So they have.
What is that a Romanian passport?
Listen.
Hey, do you mean you can't go down to McCormick's music store?
They're all there.
Are you telling me you can't go to McCormick's music store and buy a violin with a wee trumpet on it?
No.
Are you sure?
Aye.
I'm pretty sure you can, because
I'll tell you something else. They're all there at
you're full of shit, David.
No, they're all there at that caravan every morning.
No, David.
And they're all up in Europe.
David. Aye, but they're all. How many of them are from France, David?
No, they're all Poles and they're all
How do you know
Romanians.
they're all Poles? Have they got it written on
Because
their
they come out of
foreheads?
the caravan and they get their coffee. And Jerry says to them, where are you from? I'm from Poland, I'm from Romania, I'm from Bulgaria.
Aye, but the fact is, David, I work with a load of Poles. But they were here before Brexit happened.
No, they're all...
No, yeah, they were. I think you're
come.
finding the way
Aye, but that's the ones that are coming.
No, you're just being racist again. Racist. Yes, yeah. Right. Well, on Monday, it was government figures, 900,000 tonnes of vegetables rotted in the fields and had to be destroyed because they cannot get the migrant workers to come into the country.
That's funny. The big company that's on Facebook telling you, do you want your vegetables? He said, I'll have them at your door tomorrow morning.
Yeah, on Facebook. Because that's where the truth happens, in Facebook.
There's a company out there saying...
Full of crap, David.
There's a company out there because Helen's going to get
bullshit.
some.
It's like we import apples from France and from South Africa, but we don't need them because we grow apples in the Clyde Valley. Right, well, if we're growing apples in the Clyde Valley, David, and there's enough apples there, why are we wasting our time trying to import them from France?
They say it's cheaper.
No, it doesn't matter if it's cheaper, because if you try to get your apples from the Clyde Valley, I'll tell you something, David, there's not enough apples to supply and demand. If you're willing to pay £5 for an apple, then you can have them for the Clyde Valley, because that's what will happen. Right? They grow plenty of apples in this country.
Wait a minute here, so now we're going down the line of, oh well, we'll just get it because we get cheap labour.
No, it's not, David.
Let's get t-shirts made by children for children.
David, it's nothing about cheap labour. It's about the market.
I know, but that's
You would not go into a supermarket and buy an apple that costs you £5. You would just not. Right. So because that's how the market works. It works on supply and demand. If demand outstrips supply, then the price goes up. That's the rules. Right, that's how it works. Right, so we don't produce enough apples in the Clyde Valley for the demand. So the apples for the Clyde Valley would cost a fortune. Nobody would be able to afford to buy them. Right?
Well, if you think
Now,
it's bad
we do grow a lot of apples in this country.
Aye.
But the fact is, David, we don't grow any apples that are fit for eating.
We'll put it this way, if you're on about Brexit, right, if you think it's bad after 50 years, how bad's it going to be?
What are you on about 50 years? What 50
Well,
years
it's
are you
50
talking about?
years we were with Europe.
No, it's no 50 years we were with
We
Europe.
were 50 years with Europe. 50, exactly.
50 exactly. Hold
Yes.
on a minute.
1970,
Right, 1970.
right? So it's 50 odd years, right? And the thing is, if you're going to break up, and it's hard to break up after 50, what are you going to do when you divide the United Kingdom after 300?
Well, nothing will happen.
Oh, it's all right.
What's David? Right, listen. Your argument is just a waste of time.
I think you're going to park there. Is that not disabled? It's all marked, Fraser. Well, watch.
Right. Your argument is that we wanted away from Europe because we were fed up with the Europeans telling us what to do. Right? Well, the reason Scotland wants away from England is because Scotland's fed up with Westminster telling Scotland what to do. So the argument's the same, except that you don't accept that argument, right? Because you don't have a clue of how it all works. You live up here, and it's just about, and all your arguments get nothing to do with independence. Your argument's got to do with the SNP's education and the fact that they're pushing forward with acceptance of same-sex organisations and same-sex marriages. That's your objection, and that's based on your religious beliefs.
Well,
right, and it's the same. And it's the same way that you try to tell me that being a Muslim is a religion, is a national identity, right? Because all them Muslims are terrorists. That's what you come out with all the time, right? And it's a load of bullshit. And then there's a thing about Allah. Right. Well, I went and researched it, David, and see, Allah's a Hebrew word that means God, right? But you don't accept that either, because them Islamists are all foreign Islamists.
Well, go and get the Jew that blew you up.
Right.
When the Jew blows you up.
I'll tell you what, David, do you remember that time that your mum had to come running down to my house in Allenfield Road to tell me that my dad was desperately trying to get in touch with me? When my brother-in-law had been killed. Right, it was a Jew that blew him up. Right, so how are you going to argue with that?
Yeah, put out that bin.
No, there's a bin or somewhere. Right, how are you going to argue with that?
Well, that was...
That was what? That different because it was the Jews that done it. So he never blew you up. No, he blew him up in the Lebanon. Right, so the Jew was a terrorist in that case. Because the Lebanon was there. Went to the EEC. They could go to the NHS. How come the NHS is broke? How come that one? And yet that £350 million that went. Margaret Thatcher had arranged a rebate on that. 191 million of that came back straight away. But dumped by Brussels. But they're quite happy to have Scotland ruled by Westminster.
What the scientists have got to, they're coming up with this fabulous and thing that everything's going to be going down the dogs dead quick.
No, David,
and it's a global disaster and global
David,
warming.
the whole point is you don't want to believe it because it means you have to change your lifestyle to accommodate
the weather out there's no any different.
Yes, it is, David. Do you remember half the country getting flooded every winter?
Yeah.
I don't.
Do you remember?
I remember the odd flood.
Do you remember it raining that much at Aberfan? Aberfan, it rained that much. It brought the entire thing down in the 1960s.
What's down?
The whole coal mine.
David, a coal mine.
Aye.
That's different.
But it was heavy rain.
No, but it's different, David. A coal mine is loose shale.
Aye, but that happens. You get all these flooded places that flood
It
every
didn't
year.
happen in Germany.
Oh.
Right, do you know why it didn't happen in Germany? Again, you're just jumping on something that happened. You never bother to find out the reasons why. It never happened in Germany because the coal miners in Germany get paid to dig the coal mine. And when they finish the seam, they put all the garbage back into the hole. Germany doesn't have any coal mines. Right? It's one of the biggest coal-producing nations in Europe. Doesn't have any coal mines. Right? In this country, the mine owners only paid the miners when they were digging coal. When they had to dig the tunnel to get to the coal, they'd never get paid. And then the owners wouldn't pay them to shovel the garbage back into the hole when it was finished. So we had coal mines. So it's a loose mountain of shale. Right? Why do you think hills don't slide down? Because they have grass and trees.
They do up at the...
But they have grass and trees living on them, it holds it all together.
I'm
telling you, David, it's our interference that's causing most of the problems. Right? And you talk about the global ice caps melting. We don't need to worry about the North Pole. The only thing we worry about the North Pole is that the animal life that depends on it's going to die out. Because the North Pole doesn't affect the sea level. Right? Because that ice is already floating in the sea. Right? It's the glaciers in Africa and in the Himalayas and in South Antarctica that are melting, that are causing the sea levels to rise. Right? Because that water's stored on land.
Summer and winter,
right.
It'll still be the same.
No, it's not the same, David.
Right. You'll wake up in a couple of weeks' time and you'll scrape the ice off that motor.
Yeah, no, but it's getting worse. It's getting worse. The weather's getting worse.
Okay, looking forward to this.
Right. And what would they tell you? That the average yearly temperature is getting hotter. Every year it's getting slightly warmer than it was before.
Yeah, but that...
So what's causing the temperature to go up? We're not getting any closer to the sun.
Well, there was a guy on the other day on the...
Was it David Icke?
No, it was on the thing the other day and he was talking about the carbon levels in the earth. And he says, they're not any different. He says, they're telling you this, and he says, and this is a...
But again, David, you only listen to snippets.
But you're only listening
No, I'm not.
No,
David, I'm not, right.
You are. It's the same matter.
It's not. The same amount of carbon.
The same government's telling you in England that you can't do this or you can't do that, and they're restricting you to do this. And the same you lassie up there in Norway who's greeting, sit and say, my childhood's been ruined. She should go and live in Aleppo. And she should go there and stay in some of these countries where they're all, like Afghanistan, instead of stoning, my childhood is ruined. Give me my mobile phone, I'll fly around the world.
Hold on a minute, what do you know about Afghanistan?
I'm just talking about, she's sitting there, that wee, what's her name?
Greta.
Greta. She was sitting, my childhood has been
ruined.
ruined.
I'll tell you what, David.
See if she's got a computer and see if she's got a mobile and see if she flies. She's no any greener than me.
Yes, she is.
No, she's not.
Yes, she is.
No, she's not. And by the way, she's telling you not to fly. She's telling you not to fly.
I tell you what, David. She doesn't fly. She doesn't fly. She travels on trains and she travels on boats.
I don't like her, but she's still burning fuel. She never come here in a yacht.
How do you know? Right. And see the electricity she uses. Unlike yours, it's a gas-fired power station. Hers is hydroelectric. Right? Because Norway doesn't have power stations the way we have them. Not all of Norway's electricity is hydroelectric, so it's all green. Right? And if you go to the pine forests, if you go and look at the pine forests in northern Norway, most of them are dead with acid rain that's caused by heavy industry. That's pumping smog all over the place.
She's not any different if she's walking with a phone and she's walking with a computer and she travels by.
How's she not any greener?
She's no.
How's she not? There's no pollution to charge her phone, David.
Oh, so when she plugs it in the wall...
Yeah, there's no pollution.
But what's she do when she's here? What did she do when she was in New York?
I don't know.
How did she charge her phone then?
Maybe she didn't.
Did she send her away to Norway for a fresh one?
Do you know that she used her phone when she was in New York?
Of course she did.
Of course she did. Because you surmised. This is the same argument you have that every corner in Glasgow's got a Romanian refugee begging on the street. How do you know they're Romanians? Well, they've all got wee violins with trumpets on them. Like that's a Romanian passport, is it?
Anyway, we'll beg to differ.
You're talking rubbish, David. You're constantly sending me stuff on Facebook that's all about bigotry and racism. Get these foreigners out of here.
I've never said your things.
Yes, you do. You're always on about the every Muslim in the world's a terrorist.
I'll go through your page here and you can see exactly.
Right. You're always on about it.
I've never said to you anything that says get them foreigners out here. Never once, Fraser.
It's all about who's letting them in. Here they come again. Where's the children in that boat?
One of the things.
Where were they?
Doesn't matter, David. If he's a refugee, he's a refugee.
There's one thing.
They're over here to work.
You know Govan Hill?
Aye.
The guy walked up the street in Govan Hill.
You should see that, Fraser.
He walked along. He said, I'm walking along here, he says, and I can tell you here, almost every house, he said, I can even point them out, and that is, who do you call us? She's a
Nicola Sturgeon's there.
That's Surgeon's there. And the whole street and everywhere, everybody's, it's there's hardly a British person living it.
So what's wrong with that? You can't have them living. If you bring them into the country, you can't have them living in the grass verge.
No.
If there's houses there,
No,
and they'll be in houses that nobody else wants.
Can I ask you something, Fraser?
Right? It's like, remember the flats at Sight Hill?
The guy walked, listen,
Right?
the guy
Well,
walked.
hold on a minute. The flats at Sight Hill, Glasgow Corporation said they were unfit to live in and were going to tear them down. Right? The Home Office in Westminster stepped in and bought them and put the Kosovan and the Serbian refugees into them. Right? And I know, because they finished with them. Right? But everybody's complaining we can't get a council house. They weren't council houses. The council wanted them tore down. Right? It's like last week it was on, earlier Monday, it was on the news. 190 million tonnes of vegetables thrown away this year in the fields because nobody's there to pick them. Right? So they've gone to waste. Right? And all we get is when we left Europe, well, they're coming here and taking our jobs. Right? So where's the British people that can now have these jobs? They won't do them. They won't do them because they can't pay them enough. Working down there, and about half the factory I work in is from Eastern Europe. And every one of them works hard.
Oh, they do.
And every one of them just wants a wage so they can go home and keep their family. They're not sending money home to live in luxury mansions in Romania. Not one of them.
I've been in the places, I've been in these countries.
But that's what he talks about. Every corner in Glasgow has got a Romanian refugee. So I came up here with Kim a couple of months back, a good few months back. I walked from the salt market right along Argyle Street. I went up into Buchanan Street, and then I nipped over to Renfield Street, and then up to Union Street. And every corner I came to where there was a beggar sitting there, I stopped and I spoke to them and I gave them £2, right? And one, out of all that, one, and he was from Bulgaria. The rest were all Scottish. Right? So where was the Romanians? Every corner, and you can tell the Romanians. How can you tell them? Not because of the way they talk or they tell you they're from Romania, because he's standing there with a violin with a wee trumpet on it. Right? And you try to tell me you couldn't go into McCormack's and buy a violin and ask for a little trumpet amplifier.
I never saw one.
Right? That's what you said to me, and that's racism, David.
Fraser.
Right? That's what Hitler done in Nazi Germany. He decided who you were by the way you looked.
Listen.
The Jews had big noses, the Slavs had big foreheads.
Listen.
Right? And that was enough to send you to a camp. Right?
It's a bad day.
It's a
bad day when somebody up here can't get up a house.
It's not a bad day when somebody up here can't get a house, David.
Let me get one doodled. When Craig get told, as long as the granny doesn't die within 6 months, because she done a swap, there were 2 council houses. Right, Craig, can you get a council house for love of money? How many kids? Right? Tracy's the same. But I can take you to the new builds up in Westfield, and we'll go round the chap every door. And you better bring your phrase book, because see when you chap the door, they come, they've got a little break. And they're standing there, they're not got English.
Listen.
But they're all brand new spanking houses.
How did I get a house in Allen Falls Road?
Did they go up and tell
How did I get a house in Allen Falls Road?
You went up and told them you were bringing work into the town.
I got a letter from my boss saying I was an essential worker. He just did me a favour. I could have been MD. In this country, David, it's a point score. And all you've got to do is score enough points.
Well, how do you tell him?
And if Craig can't score enough points, that's the same as everybody.
But Craig has been on the housing list for years.
And the other thing you've got to remember, David, is see when a refugee comes in and gets a house, It's not the council that are giving him the house.
Well, go and
It's not the
come on,
council.
use it.
David,
North
David,
Lanarkshire invites us all to come.
North
What was it saying? All of the
Lanarkshire, David,
commodities.
they might manage the system, but it's not North Lanarkshire that's giving him the house. It's the Home Office in Westminster. And if you want to know how it all works, phone my wife Kim, because she works with an organisation that deals
They
with it all.
can't, that's what the people are
It's the
saying.
Home Office.
They can't get houses
Right.
in their own country.
It doesn't matter, David. These people come in here and take citizenship. It's their country as well. Just because they weren't born here. At one time, you were an immigrant. Your family were
They
immigrant here.
walked in the door, they've not even been here.
It
6
doesn't matter,
months.
David. It doesn't matter how long you have to be
And
here
the
before you
houses.
can be beefy here.
I think there's a lot in truth, both ways, but this is true. There are certain people in the country and they're having great difficulty to get a house.
I know
And
there
there's
is.
a lot of people come in.
But David,
A lot of people, now listen to people, a lot of people come in, and I'm not saying that, but they come in and they find something. You talked about the red road, the flats, and the other flats.
Fraser, we can show you a dozen of them.
If
no,
you walk in-
David, it's the same the whole country over. You're making out
if
like
you-
you have done
listen,
here.
Fraser, when you were brought to say all flats no longer
I know
exist.
they're gone now. I
So
know.
you take, say there were 10 stories high, that whole bunch of houses that might have went to a local person. And
That's the point, David.
But-
They couldn't go to local people because the council said they weren't fit for local people to
Yeah,
live in.
but when
Right?
they put-
And no, and the people that all stood out there when the Home Office put the refugees in, they didn't want to live in Sighthill when they were council. They didn't want it because there was slums. The council moved in, and rather than tear these buildings down, the Home Office renovated them and put the refugees in. Right? Before they were renovated, the council didn't have the money to renovate them, and the people that they would have renovated them for didn't want them. Right? Now the problem with that, with the council houses, that's Margaret Thatcher. Right? And we're all guilty for this because we all took advantage of when she said that we had the right to buy a house.
Well,
Right?
all we
But what
racist if you
what she
want.
done was she took the council rents off the council when you bought your house. Right? And they took the money that you paid the council for to buy your house. She took that off them as well. Then she capped the rates. And then she told the councils that always had a surplus. Why do you think the corporation buses were so cheap every time you went to
That family with their 3 kids, and you're going to put them up in emergency housing. And that emergency housing is going to cost you $600 a week. Now, take his
But
mortgage
David, that was
at $400 a
but
month,
David, that was nothing.
and that man can live there.
David,
And
David,
it's less than
David,
$600 a week.
again, David, you're arguing against something that you don't understand. That was nothing to do with the council.
But the council,
David,
the council are having to fork the money out
Yeah, but
for it.
because the council were forced into these situations. See, under the old system, before Margaret Thatcher said you had the right, virtually nobody get evicted out of council house. Nobody.
No, but what they're saying is no accounts. No,
Council houses
what
get
I'm
passed
saying
out to
is
families.
he's got a house up there. He's bought one of these houses, Westfield or something, right? He's bought it and he's there maybe a couple of years and the boy loses his job.
Well, so there's
So
council that
now,
are
right, well,
evicting
hold on a second, but the council have now got a problem because he's sitting there with 3 kids and they've got to rehouse them and reschool them. Now, it's going to cost them $600 a week between rehousing and getting whatever, organising for the kids. Now, the council could say, well, tell you what we'll do.
That's got nothing to do with the council.
The council having to pay it.
No, but it's got nothing to do with the council.
But the council are going to have to pay £600.
No, but it's got nothing to do with the council.
The council
For a
should...
start, David, if he's bought his house,
No.
it's the bank that's taking his house off him. The bank's
Aye,
not
but-
interested in going to the
Aye,
council.
if the council paid his mortgage, right, at $400,
Yeah.
and said to him, right, tell you what to do here. You get back on your feet, you could buy it back. But if not, at the end of the 15 years or whatever it was on the mortgage, the council owned the house.
But David, again,
And it was
again,
still cheaper than
again,
$600 a month.
Again, David, you're arguing to people that no control. Right?
You know.
It was the government that said the council couldn't do these things.
Well,
Right? And not your government in Holyrood, the government in Westminster it was, because these were part of the powers that Westminster retained. Right? And getting your house repossessed was the bank. And the bank aren't interested in going to the council to get them to help you out. They only want their money back.
it's a rotten situation to be in, but when they were having to fork out 600 and odds a week.
Well, for see all the years, David, that we voted for the Tories, that's what we voted for. Right? Now, Labour, a lot of Labour aren't any better. But when I looked into politics, the Tories, Margaret Thatcher, decided that in this country as a whole, that she had to maintain 3.5 million people unemployed all the time. It was a plan, right? Because what that meant, it meant there was a constant clamour for jobs, and it meant that employers had low wages to pay.
No,
David, they didn't fight.
Yes,
They didn't
and that's
fight.
how you were
No,
caught.
David, they didn't fight. The government realised what a mess it was going to be. Right? I work for a company, David, that exports virtually everything it produces, either into America or into Europe. Right? Now, how did we export to America when we didn't have a trade deal with America? Right? We had a trade deal. What was the trade deal with America?
For 3 years.
And all that happens in Europe now is because the government can't get the paperwork right.
This
Stuff
one
that we
was
send
taking it
goes
to
it goes
court,
to
and
Dover.
that one was taking it to court and over, weren't they? And we weren't out, and then you're saying, well, we can't go out and still pay
David,
it.
here's the reason why. See, in a national election, Scotland's dealt with as a separate entity. Right?
No, wasn't it?
Yes, it is. It was always dealt with. When you see the scoring coming up, Scotland always gets dealt with separate.
So did Ireland.
Yeah, that's right. Ireland voted to stay in Europe, so did Scotland. Right? Wales voted to leave, but then changed their mind.
Yeah, but they've got a problem
Right.
there because
There's no problem at all,
it was
David.
a national vote.
No. But how can it be a national vote when you've got 4 nationalities in the country and you've got 4 separate houses of authority?
Okay, anyway, we'll
Right.
agree to this.
In the Scottish independence referendum, the 3 main parties in this country got together. Parties that hate each other got together, came up here, stood on a platform together and said, if you vote to stay in the Union, Scotland's position within the EEC will not be changed. And then 2 years later, David Cameron gives you a referendum to take Scotland out of the EEC, and a country en masse voted to stay in. Right? Where's the democracy in that, David? Right? That's not democracy, that's dictatorship. Because the bigots in the Southern England, and that's what it was bigots that didn't want Johnny Foreigner telling us what to do. They were quite happy to tell Johnny Foreigner what to do, but they didn't want him telling us. Right? And then the argument down in the south about it's a British fish. Did the fish know that? The fish was swimming anywhere in the water it wanted, and all of a sudden it gets caught in a net. Hold on a minute, you can't catch me. This is a French net. Right? It was just ridiculous, and it's put people out of work. It's causing massive wastage in the country because like the
I used to
crops.
see them up there for a long, long time, and I'd be working up there on the streets, and they would come all over to the shop, and I'm off to Florida tomorrow with the 3 kids. I've never worked them. and we're going here, we're away, they were off to and I'm sitting there saying, I'm sitting working here.
But see, that was what you voted for.
Well, that was what was.
I remember in the 70s, and it's every week in the summer you pick up the Daily Record, and it was Agnes caught in Benidorm with her 5 kids for 3 different fathers, and she's on the dole, and she's been caught, right? And now all we get for you is it's all these Muslims and Far Easterns coming over here to steal our benefits. Do you think Agnes all of a sudden got a conscience and stopped mucking the system about? Right, there's always been people scrounged off the system, David.
Oh, I know that.
Right? But the thing is that all you had to do was look at what was happening to you. Right? 0-hour contracts.
Oh no, I
Right.
see them coming.
Right? And see when you voted for Brexit, you voted for more of that. Because that was one of the things the EEC didn't allow. Yeah. See, there you go, David. There it is. That's you in a nutshell. You hold everybody else up to the rules except when it suits you, not to hold them up yourself.
She's got that tomorrow, so.
Well, get it declared, and that way you'll be safe. Because see, if you don't declare it, and the taxman finds out,
But it's well within.
doesn't matter. The taxman will say, well, if that's just the one we caught you cheating it, how many other ones did we not catch you yet? And they'll hit you with a massive tax bill. That's the way they work, David.
I hope we catch.
Right? I had some friends in Dublin. The guy had a restaurant in Bray in Dublin, and it was quite a posh restaurant, and every now and again, if there was any sort of big stars arrived, they would eat in his restaurant. And it was like one of these places you go to in New York, and they've got the photographs of the stars that came along, right? So if a movie star turned up at his restaurant, he would get the photograph taken and he'd put it up on the wall, but they wouldn't charge him for the meal. Well, we didn't charge him. All right. So how often do you have people in that you don't charge? Right? Ended up, they hit him with a £3 million tax bill, and his business went down the Swanee because they said, well, based on the amount of customers you have in here, a certain percent of them don't pay. That's what they do, David. They do, because they would rather cheat you your money and be right than let you halfway and be wrong. That's the way the taxman works. Hasn't it changed since the days of King John, where you got your hand cut off for a shilling?
I know how it works too.
Yeah, you should go down and see how it is. It's always been corrupt in this country. I went down to Pembrokeshire and I went into the Duke of Pembroke's castle, right?
Time are you going away tomorrow?
And the Duke of Pembroke was.
Used to heard it in the car.
Never stops.
You're still here in the morning.
No.
Oh. It was a good show.
That was good.
Did you enjoy it?
Oh, that was good.
It's always a good show. It's what you make here, you know. But we had to hang about because he was at the bank, you know. So, but we got a nice pizza.
Did you get a nice pizza? Where were we?
That was the only thing we've had all day from 1 o'clock.
In Kirky. On the main street there was a wee Italian restaurant.
Yeah. 1 o'clock the other day.
It was actually,
Was it?
I looked at the price.
Got it at 1 o'clock.
It wasn't bad, you know what I mean?
Good.
Well, very nice. I'd go back there.
Did you?
About £8, £9, or £10 or something. Yeah, that's what they all are anyway.
Aye.
That one you get in the chippy up there, that's only £8.
Aye. That was a good pizza, David.
But then you're sitting in,
Aye. Aye.
so
Aye.
I should see that encyclopedia and take it home. It's terrible.
Something wrong,
It's lost it because, you know,
terrible, David. I couldn't be doing that.
I don't know how she stinks it.
Oh, I don't know who she takes out, David.
Dragging nuts.
I'd have thought they'd been divorced years ago, but that.
I think she's
I'd stopped
yeah, she's like his mother, and you know, she's awfully highly strung as well. So
I don't know if she'd stand that. I've been higher strung. I've been strong.
it's a shame Paul couldn't have Wednesday off.
No.
And I came from a dinner the morning night.
I know.
That's what it is, isn't it?
I know. Oh dear Lord.
What I was sitting there going,
Oh no, David, no. Tomorrow morning you've got heaven.
do you know he knows everything?
Did you see they talk about the Plantagenets?
Planting tears, eyes, planting cabbages.
Oh David. Oh David, I can't believe how bad that is.
It's worse, it's worse.
Oh David.
It's worse.
And listen, I wouldn't bother with David after this. Because you're getting times when Mary's getting it up to. It's silly, David.
I know. I've never sent anything he says that I can go through his whole page and there's no thing there saying hating anybody. But anyway. Right, Paul. Oh, 3 in the morning. No.
And made it like you're walking into that right away, looking for something very, very important. You know, the whole up-marketed.
Yeah.
It was the very first.
You get it all the time, and you see so much, and you know it's all right. We had to go and see the local MP about getting the street. We went up there, and it was his secretary because he couldn't be bothered travelling up for London. right? And that was in Keighley, it's a Tory MP. They're going
But
to.
Fraser, that's always been the situation.
It's not always been the same, David. Because what it is now is you've got a government that turns a blind eye to the rules when it suits them.
But we used to get, this was it straight away. It snowed here. I mean, and when we worked in Coalside, have you done Murray Avenue? I said, well, why did Murray Avenue have priority?
You're not listening to the argument. We're not arguing about the council. The council, you're right, but we didn't. Right, he has sway over the council.
Aye.
Right now, the law says that if you're in your constituency and you must attend it.
I'm talking about
Right,
like you're
no,
talking
you
about
must
streets.
attend it. So we went to his surgery,
Aye.
and he wasn't there. It was his secretary because he couldn't be bothered travelling up to London to take the surgery. And he was a Tory MP. That's what I'm saying to you. You've got a government now.
Jerry McElroy.
You've got, but Jerry McElroy's not an MP.
He was a councillor.
No, a councillor's not an MP.
No, but he had a surgery and he never turned up.
But he's not an MP. The law doesn't say that the councillors have to attend their own surgeries. Right? The law says that the MPs have to attend. But with the government you got now, ever since David Cameron, the Tories have just, they're allowed to turn blind eyes to the rules of the country that everybody else has to pertain to. But we keep electing them because the Europeans won't allow British-built electric cars to be sold in Europe without tariffs.